Hello, and welcome to the session for Decisions into Actions. I'm David Pearson from UiPath, and I'm going to talk briefly today about the benefits of automation and how it can unleash the potential of your Alteryx platform. We partner closely with Alteryx. We share a common vision on the value of automated processes, and we're seeing lots of customers using automation to reduce the burden of managing data. What I want to talk about today briefly is how to drive productivity even deeper and start turning insights into actions. RPA, or robotic process automation, is important because it targets the tasks that consumes people's time. Freeing up individuals to do interesting things is great for job satisfaction, but it also drives substantial returns to the companies they work for. This is important because the cumulative impact of inefficient manual processes can be significant. In fact, it's been measured, and the scale of the problem is enormous. Here are three stats to help quantify things. While we assume that productivity is always going up, the rate of growth has slowed dramatically by more than 50% in the last decade compared to the previous 10-year period. And the vast majority of manual work measured in this study was performed by people working on computers. But where did they spend the time? Where did it go? Collectively, knowledge workers devote more than 10 billion hours a day on moving data between applications. They use manual approaches because systems simply don't talk to each other well enough, despite millions of integration points. And as we adopt more and more applications, the problem gets worse. In fact, application growth has increased 70% in the last 4 years alone. And we see this every day. Just ask yourself, how many applications and tabs do you have open on your computer right now? This is why a people-first approach to automation is essential. It helps people with the tasks they're doing today, which is where the problem exists. We don't need a better process, just a better way to deliver the processes we have. When companies adopt automation as a strategic initiative, they're on the path to becoming what we call a fully automated enterprise. Here are a few more stats that demonstrate the upside of using automation that is personal, intelligent, and enterprise-wide. I won't dwell on these because it's far more interesting to use a real example. So let's look at a financial services customer who is deploying automation to gain a strategic advantage. SMBC in Japan has already achieved $450 million in ROI for their automation investments and is on track to see the value extend within the next couple of years to a total ROI of over $1 billion. And by optimizing their people, this forward-looking bank is freeing them up for better projects and saving money in the process. Just a brief look at the UiPath platform, because this helps you understand how today's automation is being delivered to customers. The core of automation exists within the build, manage, run modules of this platform. This is what we call RPA, or robotic process automation. Build is where new automations are developed by end users as well as automation professionals. Manage describes the deployment of robots designed to automate these workflows and business processes. And run is where the action happens. The robots operationalize the work. Every time they run, they save manual effort. Some newer concepts are critical for broader automation projects across enterprises. Discover, for example, is a critical first step. It identifies tasks and processes that will benefit from being automated. Engage describes an interaction between humans and systems in a way that helps AI-based models improve, become smarter over time. And measure is where it all gets reported. The performance, the compliance, everything that shows that the gains sought are being realized. All of this, however, is just background information. Let's look at how we can use automation to make analytics better. And this starts with the integration between UiPath and Alteryx, which makes this super easy to achieve. Decision into actions refers to the last mile of the analytics pipeline, where the knowledge worker acts upon the analysis produced by the Alteryx platform. An important concept here is where the analytics becomes now an action center. It triggers activity that leverages the information available and then activates it to trigger downstream processing. The data journey for an analytics platform like Alteryx is familiar to most data analysts. The big data challenge started out where managing format and volume of new data was the hardest thing to do. But since then, we've wrangled with that, and there's more and more challenges in terms of cleaning data and presenting it and making it ready for analysis. And we've learned that we can ask for more from our data. So we're asking now for the ability to build predictive models using machine learning. We're asking for deeper analytics, correlated data, so we can make more informed decisions, make them faster, and have them be more accurate. The ability for Alteryx to connect to many data sources and help identify new patterns provides really good fuel for decision making. And a key part of the value is with the automation that makes data wrangling easier. Where UiPath comes in is in two key areas: extend and activate. Extending the reach of Alteryx beyond access to data sources with published APIs means customers can analyze any data wherever it lives. Portfolio managers, for example, can automatically pull content from websites into their workflows, access to data hosted in mainframes or terminal server sessions, even in complex, like unstructured documents, which require computer vision to read, but these are now accessible. It's no longer impossible or even that difficult to gain all this data and make it available for analytics. RPA provides this, and it does so with relative ease. Activating the data is the second step that a UiPath Alteryx integration provides to users. This is where the analytics data gains access to downstream systems without human effort required. This is where data sharing happens. The analytics becomes the information source from which subsequent activity is triggered. So the report or dashboard now becomes an action center. It's at the heart of new automated workflows. Let's have a look at a specific example. In this case, we're going to look at a machine learning model built in Alteryx that makes predictions about inventory level for thousands and thousands of products. This model combines demand data with supply data, with inventory data, objectively to set resupply thresholds to ensure that we're not storing too many products and we're not storing too few. We've got to get that balance right. And this is the ultimate objective of a healthy and efficient supply chain process. It gets complex. It gets complex quickly because upstream suppliers differ in their ability and their time to send different products. The last thing you want to do is have an imbalance there. For example, if demand exceeds supply, COVID is a good example of that. We see companies unable to fulfill. And this is as bad as not having the demand in the first place, in that nothing gets moved and you're storing inventory or requesting things that you cannot deliver. The steps you see mostly occur when the stock level dips in this process. Without using the UiPath robots, these are the manual steps that the procurement officer takes to resupply a single product SKU. Imagine the effort when a dozen or more of these happens each day. Each of these steps takes several minutes to accomplish for the human. You can see where the robot manages the process. That's most of those steps now, interacting with Tableau, with SAP, with Excel, Outlook, and Slack to ensure that when a low inventory condition is triggered, a reliable reorder process occurs as a result. You can see why this produces a huge effort reduction. We're saying 95%, because the robot is doing all of the work. It's connecting, it's sharing the data instead of the human having to do that. As we saw in that study, this is the biggest problem with inefficiency in manual processes, is simply sharing data between applications that need it. All of this occurs, by the way, with oversight and approval of the human officer. So there's no loss of governance. There's no dilution of responsibility. Let's look at this from another angle, from the dashboard itself. In this case, we're looking at an inventory dashboard built in Tableau. You can see two forecast tables present, the inventory forecast and the more complex what-if scenario, where we can trigger regional issues and test the response to those. There are only 4 steps needed to integrate UiPath into this dashboard, which you can see on the screen. This is because a connector has been developed. Once the robots are connected to the dashboard, the setup is done. And so the functionality is now moves to the operational stage where the procurement officer can use it to actually reorder new product. And here we see that the robot is triggered by the user, identifying the data that needs action, needs attention, and then calling the robot. The dashboard may indicate a low level, or the user looks at it and makes a judgment call. Either way, the user is in charge, triggers the robot runs through all those steps we outlined earlier. And it's important we outline them because it all happens in the background. You don't see anything so much on the screen here. What you're seeing is only how the user launches and triggers the robot and some of the early feedback from that process. But we'll look behind the scenes and understand what else goes on. The robots use the context specifically and directly from the dashboard to create a new order in SAP. So there's no copy paste, no copy paste, cut and paste. There's no data that has to be picked up and manually moved to another system. The robot handles that automatically. If we look at the process, the part of the process that requires the logging of new orders in email to the inventory manager or the procurement manager, you can see that done here. And we go back to the console. Once completed, the process is completed, the user can now view the status with a simple data refresh. This information is now up to date, it's accurate. All of this occurred without the procurement officer needing to log into any other application. No changing of screens, no looking at a different system and then coming back. It's entirely automated from this console, from this dashboard. So her dashboard is now her action center. So getting started, how do people achieve these sort of results? This comes up a lot, and the answer, fortunately, is very simple. Step one is always to identify good candidates for automation. And we've got some guidelines. First, I want to jump into examples from finance and accounting use cases to show the sort of things that do very well with automation in a somewhat structured environment of F&A business processes. We took a heat map approach to this content, highlighting use cases by domain and rating their automation potential. In this case, we're only looking at 2 domains, general accounting and fixed asset accounting. We also indicate areas suitable for what we call attended robots. Attended robots interact with the human user and operate in the foreground on their computer. They emulate the same steps of the human and use the same interfaces and sign-ons. The human gives the robot the permission and control to access the systems needed, and the robot responds by working visibly on the screen for the person to observe. But how do we determine which of these processes are the better candidates for automation? Here are some useful guidelines to help, especially those taking the early steps with automation. In general, the more structured the process, the better. The more a process is repeated, the larger the benefits. Simple is always preferred when starting out, as complex tasks and processes will need additional steps or technologies to help. For example, computer vision can tell you what's on the screen or in a document, but it requires a sophisticated AI model to achieve that. These guidelines make intuitive sense and are very easy to internalize once you've done this a couple of times. We're almost out of time, so let's wrap up with a few key points. Firstly, the best way to think of automation as a fast, low-effort way to do interesting things. Automation gives you the time back, so then you can spend that time doing more creative things, more interesting things. And by making people productive doing the work they currently do, their days become better immediately and their organizations quickly benefit. We're not trying to reinvent the process, we're simply making it work a lot faster and without human effort. And we know this works, by the way, because adoption grows very quickly. When our customers start using automation, we see their adoption going up extremely quickly because the ROI is so fast and so attractive. Second point is that it's easy to identify good candidates for automation. There's no reason not to get started today. You may not realize how much time you actually spend doing tasks that are automatable, but once you start applying these criteria and looking around, you'll realize how powerful automation is in giving you back the time to do, like we said, more interesting work. Automation makes analytics an action center. This is a key concept when working with Alteryx and UiPath together. It's a new way to think about reports. So you can see them now as dynamic and integral parts of an important new workflow that starts with the analytics. It doesn't end with the analytics. And this is a powerful construct for anyone involved in machine learning, analytics, or data presentation. Now, to learn more about RPA and automation, I've included a link there that really describes it well. So make sure you download and read the white paper. I think that's at this specific link. The white paper describes how automation drives or helps drive digital transformation. It's very, very useful, and it's a great way to start the next phase of your journey. So that's it from me. Thank you for your time. Hope to see you all in person. We're getting close to that time. Hopefully at an automation conference one day soon. So thank you again, and goodbye.